Outlast was released in September 2013. It redefined the horror game genre. Developed by Red Barrels, a small indie studio composed of industry veterans from Prince of Persia, Uncharted, and Assassin's Creed. With its tight first-person design, found footage aesthetic, and sheer psychological brutality, Outlast didn't just rely on gore or those cheap jump scares alone. It used tension, atmosphere, and helplessness to a devastating effect. Over a decade later, Outlast remains to be one of the most influential and terrifying horror games ever made. It did not invent first-person horror, nor was it the first to emphasize stealth or powerlessness, but what Outlast did brilliantly, disturbingly, and unforgettably was synthesize all of those elements into a cohesive nightmare. This video essay will explore the key reasons why Outlast deserves its legacy, breaking down the game's structure, aesthetic, mechanics, and psychological themes, while analyzing the key moments that define its horror. At the heart of Outlast's horror is a simple, brutal truth. You are completely defenseless. You play as Miles Upshur, an investigative journalist who follows a mysterious tip into the decaying halls of Mount Massive Asylum, a facility run by the sinister Murkoff Corporation. Armed with only a camcorder and a notebook, Miles becomes the ultimate horror protagonist. He's not a soldier or a survivor, but simply a witness of what happened in the asylum. And unfortunately, this witness doesn't fight back, he hides. This premise is crucial to why Outlast works so effectively. Unlike Resident Evil or Dead Space, which arm players to the teeth, Outlast removes combat entirely. You can't punch, shoot, or even shove enemies out of the way. Your only tools are your camcorder, used to see in the dark via night vision, and your legs, which you'll use to run and jump for your life. This mechanic grounds the game in a relentless sense of vulnerability. Every encounter becomes a matter of flight over fight. This choice not only heightens tension, but it fuels the dread through the entire game. Outlast commits to a found footage aesthetic, which turns the player into both victim and director of a documentary. The game's HUD and visuals are filtered through the lens of the camcorder. Players use its night vision to navigate the pitch-black corridors, illuminating the horrors with a green-tinged graininess reminiscent of the Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity. This isn't just some aesthetic gimmick, it does enhance the immersion. Watching horrors unfold through a digital lens, often cracking with distortion and low battery warnings, makes every moment feel like something you were never meant to see. The battery mechanic, requiring players to scavenge for replacements, adds constant pressure to their exploration. Do you risk diving deeper with low light or just sit around in the darkness? This tension is unique to Outlast. Location is everything in horror, and Mount Massive is the perfect setting. From the moment Miles approaches the asylum gates, the game sets a chilling tone. Thunder crackles, lightning illuminating broken windows, and the looming Gothic architecture that feels like a twisted cathedral to human suffering. It's clear from the start that something terrible has happened here, and even worse is waiting for the player. The asylum isn't just one level, but an evolving labyrinth. Each area of the facility, administrative offices, patient wards, sewers, prison blocks, and underground laboratories, has its own tone, pacing, and horrors. The environments never feel like video game levels, they feel like real spaces where something awful occurred. Blood-stained walls, overturned furniture, flickering lights, and haunting ambient sounds all serve to heighten immersion and terror. As you dive deeper, Mount Massive transforms from a crumbling hospital to something biblical, hellish in scale and symbolism. The deeper you go, the more unholy the setting becomes, mirroring your descent into madness. Outlast begins with a classic horror build-up. It's an isolated setting, it's in the dead of night, and there's a man with just a camera. The first 30 minutes are an absolute masterclass of pacing. There aren't any enemies yet, there's just ambient dread. Lights are flickering, doors slam in the distance, whispers are echoing, and then it escalates. The first major scare occurs when Miles discovers a decapitated soldier and is suddenly grabbed by a variant, a disfigured, insane patient who throws him through a window. You're not injured, but it's clear now that you are the prey. Moments later, you meet Father Martin, the delusional priest who sees you as a witness to the asylum's horrors. This encounter marks the game's shift into full-blown terror. The real hook comes from Chris Walker, who is a grotesquely muscular, mutilated ex-soldier who patrols the asylum's halls. He doesn't even speak, he just growls. His presence alone creates unbearable tension. This is one of the earliest chases, where you hide in lockers as Walker smashes through doors. This will set the tone for the game's terrifying cat and mouse gameplay. One of the most defining mechanics in Outlast is its chase sequences. When enemies spot you, the music grows louder and you must flee the area. This isn't a scripted event, you're given full agency to run, hide, or die. The game excels at level design that accommodates these moments. Ducts to crawl through, beds to hide under, lockers to slip into, and so on. The brilliance is in the uncertainty. Most of the time, you don't know if you're safe. The AI is aggressive and persistent. If you make a mistake, trip up, choose the wrong hallway, or delay a second too long, you will die. This trial and error, while frustrating to some, is part of the game's philosophy. You are not a hero. You're just a guy where he probably shouldn't be. Another recurring horror are the twins. Two naked, emancipated men who speak in a calm, almost poetic manner about their desire to kill you. Their dialogue is creepily articulate in a stark contrast to their brutal appearance. The juxtaposition is effective. These aren't some raving lunatics like everybody else. They are conscious, intelligent, and deeply disturbed. What makes them effective is their recurrence. Like Walker, they stalk you across multiple chapters, becoming symbols of ever-present danger. You never kill them, and they never truly leave. Their presence raises themes of voyeurism, vulnerability, and sanity. They are watching, always, reminding the player that safety is a myth in Mount Massive. Midway through the game, Miles escapes to the lower levels of the asylum, specifically the sewer and the prison block. These environments are darker, filthier, and more claustrophobic. The sewer level is particularly terrifying due to the near total darkness and tight corridors, with Walker pursuing you in waist-deep water. It's sensory horror, distant splashes, groaning pipes, and your own panicked breathing. The prison level adds psychological horror. Here you encounter more variants who speak cryptically or stare at you blankly. The worst moment comes when you are trapped in a padded cell area and forced to sneak past lunatics with knives and hooks. These aren't monsters, they're men broken by pain, abuse, and insanity. Their unpredictability is what makes them so terrifying. No discussion of Outlast is really complete without mentioning Dr. Traeger, a sadistic, squeaky-voiced surgeon who becomes your captor in one of the game's most iconic sections. Traeger straps you to a wheelchair and monologues like a mad talk show host before mutilating another patient in front of you. The player escapes, but not before Traeger chops off two of Miles's fingers, leaving blood, screams, and a camera slipping in and out of focus. This section is masterfully paced. You're slower, wounded, and haunted by a man who truly enjoys what he does. Traeger isn't supernatural. He's just a man with a scalpel and no empathy to speak of. And that's what makes him so horrifying. His demise, being chopped in half by an elevator, is cathartic, but the trauma lingers. The player's fingers are never fixed. You see the wounds every time you pull out your camcorder, and is a constant reminder of your powerlessness. The third act centers around Father Martin, who believes Miles is a divine witness to the Wall Rider, a demonic entity created by Murkoff's experiments. Martin's cult-like reverence brings a religious subtext to the game's themes. He views suffering as purification, and Miles as a messiah figure. His followers are mutilated, crucified, and chanting scripture. Their fanaticism, paired with the blood-soaking imagery, creates a kind of spiritual horror, less about demons and more about the madness that follows blind faith. Martin eventually sacrifices himself on a burning cross, telling Miles that only through pain can he see the truth. This is the game at its most symbolically dense. It's not just a haunted asylum, it's a place where science, religion, and human cruelty all collide into one. The game's final act is its most divisive. After Father Martin's death, Miles discovers the real source of the asylum's horrors, Project Wall Rider. This experiment, run by Murkoff, aimed to create a ghost-like nanomachine entity powered by a psychic host named Billy Hope. The result is a literal monster, the Wall Rider, that kills with invisible force. This science fiction twist is jarring but very effective. It recontextualizes the entire game. What you thought was madness is actually the result of unethical experimentation. The real villain isn't the inmates, it's Murkoff. The final chase with the Wall Rider, through sterile labs and massive computers, is both tragic and terrifying. Billy, the host, is a victim. Miles shuts off his life support, killing him, but not before the Wall Rider merges with Miles, ending the game with him walking away, possessed. It's a really bleak ending. You've survived, but you've lost your humanity, and you are now the monster. What makes Outlast's horror so effective is how all of its parts work in harmony. The sound design is impeccable. creaking doors, heavy breathing, and distant screams. The music only plays during chases, which makes every quiet moment unbearably tense. The game teaches you to fear the silence. Lighting is very sparse but purposeful. Every shadow might hide some scare. The night vision is both a blessing and a curse. It lets you see, but only what the game wants you to see. More often than not, you probably wish you hadn't looked. And then there's the pacing. Outlast never overstays a scare. It builds tension, releases it, and then builds again. Each section escalates more danger and more trauma. Outlast really paved a way for a wave of first-person horror games, like Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, Alien Isolation, Layers of Fear, and Resident Evil 7. Its emphasis on vulnerability over combat became a defining feature of modern horror. It also launched a franchise. Outlast Whistleblower, a prequel DLC, Outlast 2, and the Outlast Trials have expanded the universe, each pushing the boundaries of horror in new and different directions. But the original Outlast remains the crown jewel in my opinion. Not because it was the first, but because it was raw. It never held your hand. It forced you to be face first in the horror. Outlast definitely isn't perfect. Its trial and error gameplay can frustrate people, its final act is very different from the rest of the gameplay, but its commitment to horror, to making you feel unsafe, alone, and watched, remains unmatched. It's not just a horror game, it's essentially a nightmare simulator. A descent into a place that feels real, lived in, and damned. Its themes of science gone wrong, faith distorted, and sanity tested are timeless. And its scares, built not on shock, but on slow, choking dread, still haunts me, at least, to this day. Even a decade later, I feel like Outlast still hasn't lost its edge. And if you're brave enough to press record and run through this asylum, I would 100% recommend this game. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, comment, it helps so much, and I hope you have a great day. Peace.